The morning sun glittered across Lake Willow as I stood on my modest deck, coffee cup warming my hands against the autumn chill. For 8 peaceful years, this view had been my sanctuary, my reward for decades of hard work and careful saving. My single-story lakefront home was not the grandest in Willow Creek Estates, but it was mine, and I had lovingly maintained every inch of it since purchasing it after my divorce. In the driveway sat my pride and joy, a 24-foot Bayliner trophy, white with navy trim, gleaming against the backdrop of crimson maple leaves. That boat was more than fiberglass and metal. It was the last gift my father gave me before cancer took him 5 years ago. We had spent countless weekends on that boat, him teaching me every knot, every fishing technique, every maintenance ritual until they became second nature. After he passed, those weekend fishing trips became my meditation, my connection to him, and my respite from the work week. The neighborhood had always understood that lakeside living meant boats were part of the landscape. Most homes in our community had some sort of watercraft, john boats for fishing, pontoons for family outings, even a few jet skis for the younger residents. No one complained. It was simply part of the culture of Willow Creek Estates. That harmony existed until Karen Thompson ascended to HOA presidency 3 months ago. Her campaign had promised community standards and property value protection, buzzwords that seemed innocent enough at the time. No one expected the absolute transformation that would follow. Her reign began with fresh paint mandates for mailboxes, continued with aggressive lawn length monitoring, and culminated in what now sat in my hand, a formal violation notice. The paper trembled slightly in my grip as I read the words again. Notice of violation. Recreational vehicle storage in residential driveway constitutes a visual nuisance per HOA bylaw 7.3. Immediate removal required within 72 hours. Noncompliance will result in daily fines of $100. I remembered her smirk at last week's community meeting when I had tried to explain the limited marina availability in our area. Karen had cut me off mid-sentence, her voice dripping with condescension. "Rules are rules, Mr. Mitchell," she had announced to the room of 30 homeowners. "Some people just think they are special." The board members seated beside her had nodded in robotic agreement while she tapped her French manicured nails on the gavel. The financial implications of marina storage would devastate my carefully balanced budget. The nearest facility charged $450 monthly, roughly equivalent to a car payment I had not planned for. But the alternative, accumulating $3,000 in monthly fines, was even more impossible. I folded the notice and slipped it into my pocket, gazing at my boat. Sunlight danced across its hull, highlighting the name painted on the stern, Second Chance. My father had named it that after his cancer went into remission, a remission that proved tragically temporary. Now it seemed like an ironic joke. There would be no second chances with Karen Thompson. As I finished my coffee, I noticed Karen power walking past my house, designer athletic wear perfectly coordinated, her eyes deliberately scanning my property for additional violations. Something about the satisfied twist of her lips told me this was personal, not procedural. Little did I know, that formal notice would be the first shot in a neighborhood war that would change everything, not just for me, but for everyone in Willow Creek Estates. The kitchen table disappeared beneath stacks of HOA bylaws and neighborhood photographs as I worked deep into the night. 3 days of meticulous research revealed what I had suspected: selective enforcement targeting specific homeowners while board members and their friends enjoyed immunity from the same rules. My eyes burned from sleep deprivation, but righteous indignation kept me going as I organized evidence into a 3-ring binder. On page 76 of the bylaws, I found what I was looking for: Recreational vehicles must be stored in garages or approved off-site facilities. Yet my documentation proved that Steve Williams, the HOA vice president, had a bass boat parked beside his garage for years without consequence. 3 doors down, the Hendersons had a camper van that had never received a citation. I meticulously photographed 5 other boats in the neighborhood, all positioned similarly to mine, all violation-free. My cell phone log showed 17 calls to local marinas, each conversation more discouraging than the last. Sorry, 6-month waiting list. We could take it in November when boats come out for winter. That size would be $575 monthly, plus winterization fees. The storage rates would consume nearly 1/3 of my monthly income, money I did not have to spare. The confrontation came unexpectedly on Thursday afternoon as I was documenting another undisturbed boat 3 streets over. A black Lexus SUV pulled alongside the curb, and Karen emerged with 2 committee members in tow. They approached my property with the confidence of executioners, measuring tape in hand. "We are conducting a formal assessment of the violation," Karen announced, not bothering with pleasantries. Her designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, unable to hide the contempt in her expression. "This is private property," I stated, walking rapidly toward them. "You need permission to enter or photograph." Karen waved a document. "Section 12 of your HOA agreement permits inspection with 24 hours notice." She pointed to a small sign they had apparently placed on my door yesterday when I was at work. "Now, in addition to the boat violation, we notice your oak tree branches extend over the sidewalk by 17 inches, creating a pedestrian hazard." The 2 committee members, a thin man with a clipboard and a woman filming with her phone, nodded in synchronization. They continued nodding violations, not previously mentioned, a garden hose not fully wound on its reel, a barely visible crack in the driveway concrete. That evening, my neighbor Jack stopped by with a 6-pack of beer and crucial information. "You know who Karen's husband is, right?" he asked, leaning against my kitchen counter. "Regional sales director for Blue Harbor Marina, the most expensive storage facility in the county." The conflict of interest was so blatant it took my breath away. The dots connected perfectly. Karen's aggressive enforcement of boat storage rules would directly benefit her household income through new storage contracts at her husband's marina. The emergency board meeting the following Tuesday proceeded exactly as I feared. My evidence folder sat untouched on the table as 5 board members unanimously denied my appeal without discussion or deliberation. The meeting room, normally half empty, was unusually full with Karen's supporters, strategically placed to create an illusion of community consensus. "The matter is closed," Karen announced, striking the gavel with theatrical finality. "Next agenda item." Walking to my car afterward, the financial reality crushed down on me like a physical weight. I had 3 impossible options: pay marina fees I could not afford, accumulate mounting HOA fines that would eventually lead to a lien on my home, or sell the boat that connected me to my father's memory. None of these options seemed bearable. I sat in my car, knuckles white on the steering wheel, when a stray piece of paper blew against my windshield. Irritated, I grabbed it, a real estate flyer advertising a foreclosure auction in our neighborhood. I was about to crumple it when the address caught my eye. 1842 Lakeview Drive, just 3 doors down from Karen's immaculate colonial. An idea sparked in my mind, so audacious it made me stop breathing for a moment. It was either brilliantly strategic or completely insane. Either way, it made me smile for the first time in days. Autumn winds scattered golden leaves across the foreclosure sign that I almost missed while driving down Lakeview Drive the next morning. The modest rancher sat 3 doors down from Karen's immaculate colonial, its garden overgrown but the structure fundamentally sound. The sign read County Foreclosure Auction, with a date just 9 days away. I parked across the street, studying the property with new interest. It was smaller than most homes in the neighborhood, probably built in the original development phase before larger houses became the norm. Unlike the other homes with perfectly manicured landscaping, this one showed signs of neglect, gutters sagging, paint peeling at the edges, garden beds overgrown with weeds. That evening, I conducted a property search through the county website. The owner's name appeared, Margaret Thompson. The surname immediately caught my attention. A deeper search confirmed my suspicion. Margaret Thompson was Karen's mother-in-law, recently relocated to Sunny Pines Assisted Living according to the facility's published new resident welcome list. The connection seemed worth investigating, so I visited the county records office the following morning. Tom Harris, an acquaintance who worked in property records, helped me navigate the filing system. "Interesting timing on that foreclosure," he mentioned casually, sliding several documents toward me. Among them was an application for a zoning variance filed 3 weeks earlier, with Karen Thompson listed as the applicant. The property address matched the foreclosure. "What does this variance request?" I asked, scanning the dense legal text. "Expansion of the existing structure by 30% to create a rental duplex," Tom explained. "Unusual request for our neighborhood. Most variance requests get denied in residential areas like Willow Creek." More documents revealed a troubling pattern. Karen had filed 6 similar variance requests on properties throughout the neighborhood over the past 2 years, all purchased at foreclosure auctions, all converted to rental properties owned by Thompson Family Holdings, LLC. The pieces assembled like a puzzle in my mind. Karen was using her HOA position to devalue nearby properties through aggressive enforcement, then purchasing them through a family trust at reduced prices. Her signature appeared on inspection documents for Margaret's property dated weeks before she began targeting my boat. That afternoon, I contacted my real estate friend Sarah Miller, who agreed to meet for coffee to discuss the situation. Her eyes widened as I explained my discovery and my potential plan. "You want to outbid the HOA president on her mother-in-law's house?" she asked, setting down her cup with a thunk. "That is either brilliantly strategic or completely insane." Sarah pulled out her tablet and quickly assessed the property records. The house itself is worth about $140,000 in current condition. Given the foreclosure status and needed repairs, they are probably expecting to get it for around $90,000. "Could I afford it?" I asked, showing her my financial portfolio. Sarah studied the numbers carefully. "The numbers are tight but possible if you liquidate your retirement fund and secure a second mortgage on your current home. Risky, but doable." She explained that foreclosure auctions moved quickly, with the Thompson property scheduled for the following Tuesday. "Based on this submitted estimate," she said, showing me a lowball appraisal with Richard Thompson's signature, "they are expecting no competition. They have no idea anyone knows about their connection to the property." "What about the grandfather clause for older properties?" I asked, remembering a conversation with an original homeowner who had certain exemptions from HOA rules. Sarah nodded enthusiastically. "That is where this gets interesting. Properties built before the HOA formation in 1992 were grandfathered in with exemptions from certain aesthetic restrictions. That would include recreational vehicle storage. The implications were staggering. If I purchased Margaret Thompson's house, I would not only become Karen's neighbor but would own a property exempt from the very rules she was using against me. That evening, I made 3 calls to my bank to initiate liquidation of my retirement fund, to a property lawyer to verify the grandfather clause exemptions, and to a boat transport company for a preliminary quote. As I hung up from the final call, I felt a mix of exhilaration and terror. The plan forming in my mind would require every penny I had saved, would risk my financial security, and would either solve my problem permanently or create a disaster I could never recover from. I stood at my window, looking across the lake as sunset painted the water copper and gold. My boat sat in the driveway, gleaming in the fading light, a symbol of everything I was fighting for. The plan taking shape felt like both justice and madness, but somehow, that combination seemed perfectly appropriate for the situation I faced. The county courthouse steps felt cold and imposing as I arrived for the foreclosure auction. My banker had worked overtime to prepare the financing documents, securing a second mortgage on my current home, and liquidating my retirement savings to create a certified funds letter for up to $170,000. The amount represented every penny I could access plus debt I would be repaying for years. I had spent the weekend researching property values and auction strategies, preparing myself for what would likely be the largest financial commitment of my life. Sarah had coached me on bidding tactics: start slow, appear reluctant, save aggressive moves for the final moments. The marble hallway echoed with murmured conversations as I slipped into the back row of the auction room, baseball cap pulled low over my eyes. I arrived 20 minutes early, but Karen and her husband Richard already occupied front row seats, documents spread between them on the polished wooden bench. Confidence radiated from their matching polo shirts embroidered with the Willow Creek Estates HOA logo. They chatted amicably with the auctioneer, clearly familiar with the process. Other bidders filtered in, mostly property investors and flippers based on their professional attire and quiet conversations about cap rates and renovation margins. None paid attention to me in my jeans and work shirt, deliberately dressed down to avoid recognition. My banker's approval letter felt heavy in my pocket, the numbers representing not just money but my entire financial future. Doubt crept into my mind. Was I overreacting? Was this level of risk justified? The memory of Karen's smirk as she rejected my appeal pushed the doubt away. At precisely 10 o'clock, the auctioneer called the room to order. 5 properties would be auctioned today, with the Thompson residence listed third. I sat through 2 quick auctions, studying the process and the Thompsons' reaction to successful bids. Next property, 1842 Lakeview Drive, Willow Creek Estates. 3-bedroom, 2-bath single-family residence on 0.4 acres. Opening bid $50,000. Richard Thompson raised his paddle immediately, not even glancing around to see potential competition. His body language screamed routine procedure rather than contested auction. "We have 50,000. Do I hear 55?" the auctioneer called. My hand trembled slightly as I raised my paddle, causing several heads to turn toward the back of the room. Richard glanced back, expression unchanged, clearly viewing me as merely procedural competition rather than serious threat. 55 to the gentleman in the back. Do I hear 60? 60,000, Richard called without hesitation. The pattern continued methodically up to $100,000, the amount Sarah had identified as their ceiling based on comparable sales and their previous purchases. I maintained a passive expression, deliberately appearing reluctant with each bid. 100,000 from bidder 1. Do I hear 105? 105,000, I announced clearly. For the first time, Karen turned completely around in her seat, her eyes narrowing as she studied me. Recognition dawned gradually, her face transforming from confusion to shock. She whispered urgently to Richard, whose confident posture dissolved as he realized who was bidding against them. The comfortable routine they had expected was unraveling. 110,000, Richard countered, his voice noticeably strained. The auctioneer, sensing the sudden tension, slowed his cadence. 110,000 from bidder 1. Do I hear 115? I nodded calmly, my confidence growing as I witnessed their discomfort. The rapid volley continued through 130,000, 140,000, 150,000. With each exchange, Karen's complexion grew more flushed, while Richard repeatedly checked their financing documents with growing panic. 160,000 from bidder 1. Do I hear 165? My heart hammered against my ribs as I raised my paddle for what I knew would be my final bid. $165,000. The bid hung in the air without response. Richard and Karen huddled in desperate consultation, papers shuffling between them. Richard shook his head slightly, reaching the limit of their financing. The auctioneer began his closing chant. 165,000 first call, 165,000 second call. His gavel hovered. 165,000 sold to bidder 14. The wooden gavel struck with a crack that seemed to echo through my entire body. I had done it. The property was mine. As I approached the clerk's desk to sign preliminary papers, Karen charged toward me, her face flushed crimson, designer heels clicking aggressively across the marble floor. "What do you think you are doing?" she hissed, husband restraining her arm as several court officers glanced in our direction. "This is not over. You have no idea what you have done." The property deed passed into my possession, and with it, a power I never expected to hold. Adrenaline surged through me as I signed the final document with a flourish. "Actually, Karen," I replied calmly, "I know exactly what I have done. I have become your new neighbor." Richard pulled her away before she could respond, but her expression promised retribution. As I walked into the autumn sunshine, carrying the folder that confirmed my ownership of 1842 Lakeview Drive, I felt both exhilarated and terrified. The true battle was just beginning. The law office of Jenkins and Associates smelled of leather and stability as attorney Jenkins slid his glasses up his nose, examining the property documents spread across his polished mahogany desk. A gray-haired veteran of property law, he had been recommended by Sarah as the best real estate attorney in the county. "Fascinating loophole," he noted, tapping a highlighted paragraph with his monogrammed pen. This property was one of the original lake homes, established before the HOA formation in 1992. The grandfather clause specifically exempts it from aesthetic restrictions regarding recreational vehicles and boats. He flipped through historical documents confirming the exemption. Mrs. Thompson Sr. clearly never exercised these rights, but they transfer with the property regardless of ownership changes. The blueprint of the Thompson property lay beside the legal documents as we discussed placement options. The driveway, visible from both Karen's master bedroom and her kitchen windows, sat exactly 16 feet from her property line, legally untouchable but impossible to ignore. "I want everything documented and bulletproof," I explained. "Karen will look for any technicality to fight this." Attorney Jenkins nodded approvingly. We will conduct a current property survey, file the grandfather clause exemption confirmation with the county, and prepare a comprehensive compliance package demonstrating adherence to all applicable regulations. Over the next week, 3 contractors visited the property. First came the concrete specialist who reinforced the driveway pad to support my boat's weight, ensuring it exceeded load-bearing requirements. Next, the electrician installed solar-powered spotlights for security purposes, strategically positioned to illuminate the boat day and night. Finally, the landscaper cleared sight lines while maintaining required setbacks from property boundaries. Word spread through the neighborhood grapevine. Jack arrived with his toolbox to help install security cameras. Mrs. Fitzgerald from 2 streets over brought homemade cookies and stories of how Karen had fined her for a bird bath that was not architecturally consistent. 4 other homeowners who had received similar violations offered assistance, delivering refreshments during the preparations. The delivery date was calculated precisely. Wednesday evening, 30 minutes before the monthly HOA meeting where Karen planned to announce new enforcement measures according to the agenda Jack had obtained. The timing would ensure maximum visibility while forcing Karen to choose between addressing the situation and maintaining her scheduled meeting. Every detail received meticulous attention. The property line survey established clear boundaries, precisely measured and marked with official stakes. County noise ordinances were studied to ensure the boat delivery would fall within permitted hours. HOA bylaws were analyzed for any potential counterattacks Karen might deploy. Attorney Jenkins prepared a comprehensive documentation folder containing the grandfather clause certification, property survey results, driveway load capacity certification, and signed witness statements confirming all regulations had been met. He even included photographs of similarly situated boats throughout the neighborhood, documented with dates and addresses. The irony was not lost on me that I was more carefully adhering to regulations now than at any previous point in my residency. My original driveway boat parking had been compliant with standard rules, but this new positioning would be legally bulletproof through historical exemption. As the boat transport company confirmed their arrival time for Wednesday at 6:45 p.m., I reviewed my documentation folder one final time. Everything was in perfect order, every potential objection anticipated and addressed. I walked the perimeter of my new property, watching the sunset paint Karen's house in golden light. From her kitchen window, I could see her moving about, unaware of what was about to unfold. Her crusade against my boat had led to this moment of perfect, legal revenge. The satisfaction of knowing that everything about to unfold was completely legal provided a warmth that rivaled the summer sun glinting off my boat's pristine hull. I had not broken a single rule or regulation. I had simply mastered them better than the person who had weaponized them against me. Jack joined me for a final inspection, handing me a cold drink as we surveyed our preparations. "You know she will lose her mind, right?" he asked, unable to suppress a grin. I nodded, feeling surprisingly calm. The chess pieces are positioned, and Karen has no idea she has already lost. The boat transport truck rumbled down Lakeview Drive precisely at 6:45 p.m. on Wednesday, golden evening light, catching its massive flatbed where my bayliner sat proudly. The driver, a burly man named Ray who had enthusiastically embraced the mission when I explained the situation, gave me a thumbs up as he carefully maneuvered toward the driveway of my new property. Neighbors emerged from homes like moviegoers to a premiere, folding chairs and beverages appearing on lawns as the spectacle unfolded. Some brought snacks. Others took photos. Word had spread through the neighborhood text chain, creating an audience for what many were already calling the Great Boat Liberation. The precision of the delivery team impressed even me as they maneuvered my vessel onto the reinforced concrete pad. 4 workers, using laser measuring tools, positioned it at the exact angle calculated for maximum visibility from Karen's property, while maintaining the mandatory 16-foot clearance from the property line. They secured it with professional-grade straps and stabilizers, clearly there to stay. The security spotlights activated automatically as dusk approached, illuminating my boat like a museum exhibit. Their solar panels gleamed in the fading sunlight, promising months of uninterrupted illumination. The freshly painted name on the stern, Second Chance, faced directly toward Karen's kitchen window. At exactly 7:15 p.m., the distant slam of the community center door announced Karen's arrival. The scheduled HOA meeting had clearly been interrupted by urgent text messages from her husband, who stood on their front porch, phone pressed to his ear. Her high heels struck pavement like angry exclamation points as she stormed toward the gathering crowd, 3 board members struggling to keep pace behind her. Her face contorted upon seeing my boat perfectly positioned, professionally secured, and clearly there to stay. The crowd parted silently as she approached, many filming with their phones. "This is absolutely unacceptable," she shouted, her own phone already recording what she clearly believed would be damning evidence for future legal action. "You cannot park that monstrosity here." I stood calmly beside Attorney Jenkins, who stepped forward with professional composure. "Good evening, Mrs. Thompson. My client has asked me to provide you with this documentation." He offered her the bound presentation of documents, property surveys, grandfather clause certification, county approval, and signed witness statements confirming all regulations had been met. The comprehensive package included historical photographs of the property predating HOA formation, proving its exemption status. Karen's hands shook visibly as she flipped through pages of irrefutable compliance. Her eyes darted frantically between the documents and my boat, searching for any violation she could exploit. "Emergency board meeting now," she demanded, turning to the treasurer and secretary who had followed her from the community center. The treasurer, Michael Simmons, a retired accountant who had generally supported Karen's initiatives, shook his head slowly. "Karen, I have reviewed these documents before coming over. Everything appears to be legal. The grandfather clause is clearly documented." Murmurs rippled through the gathered neighbors, years of accumulated resentment finding voice in this moment of Karen's powerlessness. "If you can park your RV in your side yard, why couldn't I keep my boat?" called Mrs. Fitzgerald from the crowd, her voice trembling with emotion. "You fined me $600 last month." More complaints emerged, forming a chorus of dissatisfaction with Karen's selective enforcement. The Robinson family described receiving violations for their daughter's basketball hoop, while board members' children had similar equipment without consequence. The Garcias detailed being cited for their vegetable garden, while Karen's ornamental plants exceeded height restrictions. As the realization of her powerlessness settled in, Karen's expression transformed from anger to something more dangerous, calculated vengeance. She handed the documentation folder to Richard, who had joined the gathering, his face pale with concealed rage. "This is not the end," she promised, voice low and threatening. "There are other ways to handle this situation." With that ominous statement, she retreated toward her colonial phone pressed to her ear, presumably calling the HOA attorney. Richard followed, casting one venomous glance back at me and my gleaming boat. Neighbors approached to congratulate me, many expressing relief at seeing Karen's authority challenged. Jack raised his drink in a toast that others joined. "To the boat liberation of Willow Creek Estates," he called, triggering cheers across the gathered crowd. As darkness fell completely, the security lights illuminated my boat in theatrical splendor. I knew Karen was watching from her window, probably already plotting her counterattack. But for now, victory felt complete and satisfying. The boat that connected me to my father's memory now stood as a symbol of standing up to petty tyranny. The security camera footage played on my laptop screen in crisp high definition, unmistakably showing Karen approaching my boat at 2:17 a.m., box cutter in hand. Her face was clearly visible in the infrared lighting before motion-activated floodlights flooded the area, causing her to freeze momentarily before retreating to the shadows. This was not an isolated incident. 3 similar recordings documented her increasing desperation over the past week: attempts to place garbage bags near the boat, photographing non-existent violations at peculiar angles to create optical illusions, even redirecting her lawn sprinklers to spray across the property line toward my boat. Each morning brought new evidence that I quietly compiled without immediate action. Attorney Jenkins advised patience, building an irrefutable case rather than engaging in direct confrontation. "Let her dig her own legal grave," he counseled. The breaking point arrived unexpectedly during the quarterly budget review when Treasurer Michael Simmons discovered irregularities in HOA landscaping contracts. All landscape maintenance for community areas had been awarded to Sunshine Gardening, a company owned by Karen's sister, charging rates 20% above market value. Further investigation revealed similar arrangements with pool maintenance, security services, and holiday decoration vendors, all connected to Karen's family members or close associates. The pattern of financial self-dealing extended back to her earliest days as board president. The emergency community meeting filled the clubhouse beyond capacity, homeowners standing along walls as evidence mounted. Michael Simmons presented financial records showing nearly $87,000 in questionable transactions over 18 months. Attorney Jenkins displayed my security footage documenting Karen's trespassing and attempted vandalism. Karen sat isolated at the board table, husband absent, as neighbors she had fined and harassed now witnessed her downfall. Her designer outfit and perfect makeup could not mask her growing panic as the evidence accumulated. "According to our bylaws," announced the vice president, voice steady despite the tension filling the room, "we can hold an immediate vote of no confidence when documented evidence demonstrates misuse of authority or violation of fiduciary duty." The vote required no discussion or debate. Hands raised overwhelmingly in support of Karen's removal, with only her 2 closest friends dissenting. Within 20 minutes, she was escorted from the building, no longer HOA president or board member. The subsequent forensic audit revealed the full extent of financial mismanagement, resulting in potential legal consequences beyond the HOA level. Within weeks, a for sale sign appeared on the Thompsons' Colonial as they prepared to leave the community they could no longer comfortably inhabit. My decision about the foreclosure property came easily, converting it to a community boat storage facility with reasonable rates, managed by a rotating committee of homeowners. The grandfather clause exemption that had served my revenge would now benefit the entire neighborhood, providing affordable storage for the watercraft that were natural extensions of lakeside living. 6 months later, a new board operated with transparency and reason. Boat ownership flourished along the lakefront without excessive regulation. Weekend cookouts reunited neighbors formerly divided by Karen's regime of selective enforcement and personal vendettas. The quarterly HOA newsletter, once filled with violation notices and threats, now focused on community improvements and social events. The boat storage facility, officially named Second Chance Storage, operated at capacity, generating funds that supported lake conservation efforts. The irony was not lost on anyone that my boat now sat exactly where it always had, in my original driveway, while the Thompson house served the community Karen had claimed to protect. The very rules she had weaponized against residents had ultimately led to her downfall when applied equally and fairly. As I cast my fishing line into the sunset-painted lake one evening, Jack's boat idling nearby, I reflected on the unexpected journey. What began as a simple fight over boat parking had exposed corruption, united a neighborhood, and created lasting positive change. Sometimes justice arrives not through confrontation, but through careful application of the very rules meant to oppress. As I reeled in a respectable bass, I realized that sometimes standing your ground means buying the ground beneath your opponent's feet.